Thank you very much. Maybe just a quick one from myself is the issue of the national statistics, population, and many other things. We sat here with a commission on revenue allocation, and we did ask them, why are you seeking for statistics of your own and not using the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics statistics? And I think in their opinion, the statistics that you have are not accurate, or they don't address the issues that they want. So my question is, what are you going to do if approved to ensure that the national statistics that we have from the Bureau of Statistics, especially on population and others, we had issues with the population statistics, issues of poverty index. What are you going to do to ensure that those statistics are near accurate as possible, so that any other commission in this country can easily come to your bureau and pick the statistics very confidently, so that we don't duplicate, we don't see the Kenya Bureau, Commission on Revenue Allocation, we don't see a commission on or higher education going for doing their own statistics. What are you going to do to ensure that you really make that institution a body that can be relied on? Yeah, and then I'm being reminded by a member here. CDF is part of that docket, and I'm sure also in terms of poverty, there's a program called Poverty Eradication. What is your opinion in terms of, I'm sure you are a resident of this country. What is your opinion on the Constituency Development Fund in terms of way forward? The arguments about others are saying they don't see the use, others feel there is a lot of benefit in it. So what, in terms, because you'll be handling CDF, because what do you think, what is your opinion on CDF? Thank you. That marks the last from the question. So the honorable members, those who have not gotten an opportunity, I'll give you the first opportunity in the next nominee. Please, you'll. Huh? So let's proceed.
I'm going to try as much as possible to answer the questions.
Very briefly.
Very briefly.
Yeah.
On the issue of privatization of water services raised by Honorable Nanok, the truth of the matter is that the reforms have not brought privatization as such. What the reforms have brought in is commercialization, but with a proper approach. Commercialization, the target of that focus has been to ensure that as we process and provide water to Wananchi, the industry is able to recover at least operation and maintenance costs. That is the object of the commercialization. In my view as a planner, what I would do differently would be, one, to ensure that areas that have not been served, particularly informally settled areas, get formalized access to these services, because that is where most of our populations, particularly in the urban areas, reside. So that, to me, would be a renewed focal area in the area of water. Now, residential settlements and the issue of physical planning raised by Honorable Manga. This is something for which, as a country and all as government, we need to urgently address, so that physical planning follows function. It also follows access to basic services, because this is the main object of our quest for development. So for me, what I would really go for is to adopt, to integrate what we call spatial planning, digital spatial planning, in all infrastructure-related endeavors in our country, so that all services can be mapped and put together in one synchronized manner, so that those who may want to put up structures haphazardly realize that it will not be a tenable thing to do. But I will try to spearhead that from my planning docket. Honorable Davis talked about the short and the long term. I think maybe if he may, I didn't quite get the questions clearly. If I may, through the chair, request Honorable Davis to Dennis.
Honorable Dennis, please.
Yes.
Maybe what you do,
Yes.
proceed with the ones you have, and then Dennis, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the issue of floods, I'm very keenly aware of the causes of floods in this country, having been in that ministry. It has a multiplicity of causes, but the bottom line is we would like to encourage, or we would like to ask our sectors that will be planning for this to ensure that one of the things that is the top priority is water harvesting. Already, the government is doing this. We have started, after a very long time, to put up large dams. And this is really the only way to go, because it will serve two purposes. We are a water-scarce country. It will serve us to increase our water availability, so that it gives the base even for achievement of our targets of irrigation, of irrigating 1 million acres over this 5-year period. So that, to me, is something that I would really passionately pursue, to ensure that that is part of our planning, because that is really the future. It's also part of our strategy to mitigate against climate change and climate variability. So I will ensure that agenda is pursued. In the area of waste management, yes, that is also an important area, because waste management is key to keeping our environment clean. If you look at the provisions of the Constitution with regard to environment, it's talking about a clean and secure environment. And we cannot do that without waste management. So as we implement the Constitution and the vision and the manifesto, this is one area that we must, I'm going to ensure that at the sectoral planning level, it is given the due prominence and focus that it requires. Youth. In the area of youth, we are aware that 70% of our population is composed of women and the youth. Even though their needs may be different, they constitute what I would call an untapped huge potential in our country. One of the things I would like to do, because I know that National Youth Service and youth and gender issues are going to be under this ministry. National Youth Service has been used with the noble cause of mopping up destitute, delinquent youths who did not go to school. I would like to see National Youth Service transformed into an institution that adequately empowers the youth to earn a proper livelihood. In that regard, I would propose that we look at the act that established that institution with a view to, one, increasing its curriculum base to include skills that would enable the youth, again, to connect to the other initiative that the government has undertaken of providing women and youth fund. So once they get those skills, they will be able to actually benefit more better from the youth fund that is the government has put up. Secondly, in the area of innovation and science, I think that is where we really need to focus on. If you look at the MTP2, its key orientation is on science and innovation, because that is what is going to ensure we have industrial takeoff. So those are the areas, in my view, that we would need to focus on to get the youth up and running, and so that they get the opportunities that are being presented in the initiative the government is putting up.
Please move a bit fast. We have less than 10.
Yes, I will. As I said, I will.
Less than 5 minutes actually for you.
Okay. Sorry, sir. As I said, I would fit very well in this docket, and I've explained. I've given the reasons why. I'll be able to deliver on this docket. On the issue of again youth, Honorable Dawood, yes, the issue of small-scale retailing is also important in empowering our youth. This is one area also that we will need to focus on, alongside, because you find that most of this, the small-time retailing, they'll be able to, once they get the skills, they'll be able to do this from the youth fund that is has been set up. In the area of fresh produce, we will be looking at value addition, which is very, very important, other than just having the farmers produce and then try to look for the market when there's opportunity for value addition in that chain up to the market. Finally, from Honorable Chairman, I believe that our national statistics are robust enough to be used by the various partners by the various users in the public sector. The only thing I think that we may need to do is, for example, in areas of poverty index and indicators of performance, is to strengthen the national integrated monitoring and evaluation system. Because that, if we strengthen it, and then it also strengthen the linkage between the national planning and the sectors, and the sectoral planning, and even the county planning level, then that will improve tremendously the quality of our data. I finally would say that our development, water resources are a national resource, in which case we would have to look at that vis-a-vis the local people who live there. What I would advocate for is what we call compensation for environmental services. In a case where the local population is actively involved in conservation of the environment, that is an approach that I would advocate for. Secondly, of course, it would also be important that the planners at the sectoral level plan for provision of those services to the people living around those areas. That is extremely important to follow. So those are the two guiding principles that I would use: the provisions of the Constitution, and also the principle of compensation for environmental services in helping to conserve the water catchments.
I'm here to listen to hear
Yes.
member for Nambales.
Yes.
Yeah. And please, we are 10 minutes away from your appointed time.
Okay. For me, from a planning point of view, Western, there is a high potential for agricultural productivity and also fish production and processing. That is an area that, to me, we would need to focus. Those are some of the things that would excite me to see happening around there. Similarly, there's other parts of the countries like the arid areas. Turkana, of course, we have discovered resources, including water. We have discovered a high-yielding underground aquifer in Turkana. What remains is to put in programs, to plan, to exploit that resource, to ensure that Turkana becomes a breadbasket of this country.
Is it to plan or to now?
To plan and implement. Yes.
Okay, anyway, yeah. Thank you. So I think members, let us agree that given the time we have done a fair job. Mheshimiwa from Masava, I will give you the first opportunity in the next maybe with okay, 1 second.
Mine is to do with CDF, the professional question that you are required to give an opinion. I realized whatever you gave was not a professional opinion, and you never adequately covered the issue to do with CDF, which is very sensitive to the members of parliament and to the members, or rather our constituents we represent. So I thought it should be clearly covered, it should be clearly or adequately answered. Thank you.
Actually, he's saying that you travel carefully on CDF.
I think, Jimmy, you have answered that question for... So, Engineer, I think Jimmy has assisted you to answer that that question. Honorable members, again for record, we have a communication from Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. And for record, there is nothing about him. They said he's basically he has no issue. He has no issue with the Anti-Corruption Commission. So that again, that is for record. Otherwise, I want to say thank you very much, Engineer. I think the honorable members have heard you, and I believe they will do a recommendation based on what you have said. And if eventually you are approved, because the power to approve, this committee will make a recommendation to Parliament, National Assembly, and that is where all the power resides in terms of the determination. So I want to wish you all the best. If approved, I hope you will be meeting with us quite often, because you'll still be under this committee in terms of what we do in Parliament. So we hope to work together if you are approved in future. In case we still require you after this, if anything comes up again, please, you may be called at a shorter notice. So please be ready. Otherwise, thank you very much. If you have any parting shot.
Well, I just wish to thank you, Chairman, and the members for making me feel at ease and enabling me to say what I got. And thank you very much for that opportunity.
Thank you very much. All the best. I request our gracious lady again to escort you out and bring us the other nominee. Members, we are not adjourning. We are not. Please remain seated in your seats.
Of course, that was the second nominee, Principal Secretary nominee to be vetted this particular day. That was Engineer Oganga Magiti, looking at the planning docket. The first one, of course, was PS nominee for devolution, John Concella, who was interviewed earlier on. Of course, the third person in line will be Dr. Kamau Thuge, looking at the National Treasury. Of course, today we're looking at the vetting of the 26 principal secretaries nominated by President Uhuru Kenyatta. The vetting process is already underway. 15 nominees are set to be interviewed today by different departmental committees. And of course, just to give you a sort of expectation, after, of course, the vetting process, the committees will prepare reports on the suitability of the candidates and table them in the National Assembly. Immediately after that, we will have the MPs who will, of course, debate and then adopt or reject the nomination of any candidate, depending, of course, the outcome of the vetting committees. Immediately after that particular process, upon clearance, all the nominees will be appointed to serve in the 18 ministries under the cabinet secretaries who are already in office. Remember, the 26 nominees were picked from a field of 66 candidates shortlisted by the Public Service Commission. The vetting process is underway, of course, at the Continental House, and here on Citizen Television, we are relaying that particular event live. Just looking at some of the sentiments of the permanent secretary nominees who have already been vetted. If we start with the first one, that is John Concella, looking at the devolution docket. He's very particular about the 30% of funds that will be given to counties. He was very particular, saying that 30%, the 30% of the funds that will be given to counties should be for development. Very important indeed. And of course, something else that he was really particular about was the place of the whole devolution process, saying the devolution process is owned by all Kenyans. Basically, beg your pardon, basically calling upon every person, all Kenyans, to actually work for the success of devolution. Something else that he was also very particular about was the place of the relationship between the Senate and the National Assembly, basically saying they should work together to protect devolution. So those are some of the things that Concella mentioned. Of course, the second nominee was Engineer Oganga Magiti, the planning docket. He was particular about a couple of things. Of course, he's an engineer with 25 years of experience in public service. And looking at his docket, he managed to help bring about water sector reforms. He improved service delivery in water sector. He helped formulate the new water bill. And he was very particular about the kind of person he is, saying that he is a results-oriented person, promising to build on the foundation built by his predecessors. Right now, of course, the members are set for the next person in line, that is Dr. Kamau Thuge, looking at the National Treasury docket. Let's.
Stephen Bitok, MP of Mosop, Nandi County.
Introduction is 1 second, 1 second.
My name is Abdul Rahim Daud, Northi Menti, Meru County.
John Simlola, Voi Constancy, Taita Taveta County, and member of this committee.
Engineer Shabda Kumanga from Korea East, member of this county committee.
Rose Nyamunga, Kisumu County.
Oburu Ogenga, nominated member, parliament and a member of this committee, and I also want to, Mr. Chairman, declare my interest. I know Dr. Kamau Thuge. We have worked together with him in the ministry, and I don't want to talk of his competence, but I know he's a very competent officer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Andrew Toboso, MP Butere Constituency, Kakamega County. And Chair, also need to declare my interest that I've known Dr. Thuge, having worked in the Ministry of Planning when he was at the Treasury. And just like my colleague, Dr. Buru, I won't talk about his competence now, but I know that we worked well. Thank you.
So you guys, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Joash Olu. I'm the Member of Parliament for Langata.
Chair Daniel Ebuyo, Member of Parliament for Turkana West in Turkana County. Thank you.
Makau Kingola, Member of Parliament Mavoko, Machakos County.
Jimmy Angwenyi, Member of Parliament for Tuchaja North, Kisii County.
Members on from my far left.
My name's Sami Koech, MP Konoin constituency, Bomet County.
I am Ronald Kiproti Tonui, Member of Parliament, Bomet Central.
My name is Sakwa Bunyasi, Member of Parliament for Nambale. I must declare that I've known Kamau Thuge. He was the Tiger Woods of our golf club in Washington, and I also know him professionally and socially. Thank you. But that will not have any bearing on what I might say.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Miriam Otucho, Member of Parliament for Teso South, Busia County. Member of this committee. Thank you.
Kubai Kiringo, Igembe Central, Meru County.
My name is Dennis Waweru, Dagoretti South, Nairobi.
Sakaja Johnson, nominated member and national chairman of TNA. We have also worked together with Thuge in Treasury in the then office of the Deputy Prime Minister. But I don't think there's any interest to declare. His competence will show if it exists in this interview.
Asante sana, thank you.
My name is Honorable Nelson Gaisho here, Vice Chair of this committee.
My name is Evan Soanda, Clerk of this committee.
Sorry, Chairman, I was out. My name is Tyrus Ngahu, Member of Parliament, Kangema, Murang'a County.
My name is Helen Kina, Clerk of this committee.
Thank you. I think from my side, my names are Benjamin Langat, MP for Inamoi, Member and Chairperson of Departmental Committee on Finance, Planning and Trade. Just introduce yourself also.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Dr. Kamau Thuge,
and I'm nominated for the position of Principal Secretary at the National Treasury.
Thank you very much. Dr. You seem to have a lot of, can I say, friends or campaigners led by Dr. Oburu Odinga. But anyway, I think I want to welcome you to this meeting. Usually we are a 29-member committee, 29 member, just like any other departmental committee. We have quorum to transact the business of today. I've confirmed. I am sure you know the business that brought us together today, and we are just going to go there directly because of time. So feel free. What I'm going to do is that I will allow members to get questions, to give you questions, maybe in 5-5, and then you answer, and then I go to another round. Please, when you're answering, answer the questions in a very concise and precise, so that we make progress within the time which we have. To start off, maybe I'll just ask you to, of course, we have your CV, but we want also to hear from your voice. Tell us about yourself, academically, professionally. I believe so, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me start by first of all thanking His Excellency for nominating me to this position, and also to be able to address the members of Parliament as well as the nation on the issues that we will be dealing with at the National Treasury. As I said earlier, my name is Dr. Kamau Thuge. I was born in Mogoga in Kiambu. I went to high school in Lenana. After finishing Lenana, I went to the U.S. I studied in Colorado College in Colorado State. I did my BA in economics there. After I finished, I got a scholarship, a full scholarship at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland. I went there, did my master's. After I finished my master's, I continued to study there with a scholarship and got my PhD from the Johns Hopkins University. After I finished, I went and I taught for 1 year in Pennsylvania at a college called Franklin and Marshall College. I taught advanced macroeconomics and microeconomics. From there, I joined the International Monetary Fund through the Economist program. This is a program that they have at the IMF. They have a similar one at the World Bank called the Young Professionals, and that's how they recruit young professionals and economists to the IMF. You serve for 2 years, and then they make a decision as to whether to keep you or not. So I went through the Economist program. I graduated from the Economist program and became a full staff member of the IMF around 1985. I believe at that time I was the only Kenyan professional at the IMF. But shortly after that, within a few months, Joseph Kenywa, who is the outgoing permanent secretary at the Treasury, joined the IMF. He stayed there for 5 years and then came back to Kenya and has served this nation with great distinction. So I joined the IMF. My work basically involved traveling to various countries to offer economic advice, sometimes to negotiate economic programs that are supported by the IMF. And in that context, I was able to travel to Russia, to Kazakhstan. I did a lot of work in Africa. I also did a lot of work in Latin America, especially in the Central America. I visited places like Guatemala, El Salvador, and Costa Rica. I also did a lot of work in the Caribbean and also visited Paraguay. Around 2004, I was asked to come and serve in the government here. I was seconded to the government. I came and I served. I was the director for monetary and economic, fiscal and monetary affairs from 2004 to 2005. In 2005, I was appointed the economic secretary, but I also continued to hold the position of the head of the the Fiscal and Monetary Affairs Department, which we renamed Economic Affairs. So I was holding two portfolios, one as the Economic Secretary and the other one as the Director of Economic Affairs Department. So from about 2005 to 2008, I was actually the one really responsible for developing the macroeconomic policies and the budget and framing the budget framework. In 2008, I had to return. I had to go back to Washington, back to the IMF. My leave had expired, so I stayed there until 2010. When I was asked to return by the then Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance. So I returned in around November of 2010, and I focused largely on issues to do with fiscal decentralization and devolution. And since that time, we worked together with Dr. Oburu here when he was an assistant minister there, developed all the finance management laws that will govern the process of devolution. And there are several laws that perhaps maybe during the question and answer that I'll address. But essentially that is what I've been doing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. for that brief introduction of yourself. Thank you very much. I want to now call upon the honorable members to put questions to Dr. I want to start. I think I've been biased towards my right-hand side. Let me start from my left-hand side this time around. Let me start with the member for Kanain.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Honorable Koech. The major problem with the Treasury has been the skewness of allocation of resources to various parts of this country. Devolution, the Constitution under the chapter of devolution may have provided some solutions to this problem. But how do you intend to make sure that this practice does not continue in future? For example, my district in 2003 received an average of 10 million for 4 years. That was both recurrent and development. It was only in 2007 when I went to beg the then president to give us some money in exchange for votes. That is the only time we got something. So how do you intend to address the issue of skewed allocation?
Thank you very much. I think you have made a very good point. Mheshimiwa Ngau.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No problem. You comment. Dr. We have no doubt with your capability. But to me, I also have a problem with the Treasury in terms of the way you share resources. And this committee has a very good example. If we are to move forward this economy, Treasury this year, in terms of industrialization, having been there, you allocated very little resource towards industrialization and even commerce. Knowing very well, if we are to move forward, if we are to eradicate poverty, we are supposed to spur economic development through industrialization. And you having been there, what is your take in terms of now the current budget that you are facing now that reduced industrialization to give a very decent amount of money, and we want to drive this economy?
Yeah, I think also so that we put it in the correct, because it is the Treasury and other ministers that make proposals. Yeah, those are proposals. So I want you to put it correctly, that you propose very little.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we are also the ones who take responsibility as National Assembly.
Yeah. As a ministry, you propose very little allocation toward industrialization. And how do you want us to achieve economic growth if we are stifling money that is supposed to go to industrialization and even commerce, which we know these are the sectors that can drive this economy, that we now be able to have money to fund.
Thank you.
The nation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me look to my side. Let me look to my side. Okay, Dennis. Engineer Dennis.
Yeah, Kamau. I want to ask you.
You introduce yourself when you're asking a question so that you cannot hear.
We know each other, but my name is Dennis Oero. I had not declared my interest earlier. Mr. Ngaho is talking about investment in industrialization. Mine goes a little bit deeper. We know that natural resources are being exploited in Africa and taken to China and India. And those goods come back as finished goods to Africa, to our market. In view of the recent development in geothermal potential in Olkaria, which is in excess of 20,000 megawatts, when we are only consuming around 1,600. And in view of the inefficiencies of our distribution, that is KPLC, which makes cost of power double, what is your thought of trying to bypass the inefficient distribution and providing cheaper power to some of these companies which we can talk to relocate their manufacturing concern from very far in Asia, where when their market is actually in Africa? Is there a way you can be able to get into direct negotiation with some of those huge power consumers in such a way that you can undertake in a year or two to provide 1,000 megawatts directly? I know you're not in that ministry, but I'm sure it's an executive ministry you are in such a way that you can be able to undertake, just let me finish. You can be able to undertake that you're going to produce and provide that power at a fixed rate of maybe 10 years, now that we have an exploited 20,000 megawatts of geothermal, and shield them from the expensive power through Kenya Power and Lighting. Maybe Kenyan can be able to sell.
Yeah, Mheshimiwa, I think you have so that, yeah. Mheshimiwa Sakacha.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to ask a few questions around the issue of devolution. Considering the Treasury has a key role to play with respect to devolution, and also aware of the unfortunate incidences that are occurring where people are looking at devolution as a competition, and there's an adversarial tone that has been taken between different institutions. I'd like to ask a few questions. Number one, if you look at the formula that has been proposed by the CRA of the intergovernmental fiscal transfers to the counties, you realize that 70% of it depends on how many people are in a county and how poor they are. And there is really no variable that promotes or rather incentivizes the counties to produce more. An example is probably if you look at the India formula, they have the provincial GDP as part of the variables. Do you think that we are staring at a problem where all we are thinking about is revenue allocation and no one is looking at the issues of revenue generation? And what do you think Treasury should do, or what can be done to ensure that we start thinking about revenue generation and how to bake the cake before we focus on how to divide the cake? Secondly, Treasury has to guarantee any county that intends to borrow. So, and you have a key role to play when it comes to subnational borrowing. What factors will you consider when approving requests from counties to engage external donors, etc., when it comes to subnational borrowing? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last in this round is MB Mafoko.
Yes, thank you very much. I am Makau Kingola, Member of Parliament Mavoko. You have been accredited as an international economist, and you've worked for IMF. You've mentioned World Bank. I'm just wondering now, with the dwindling budget, and knowing that we'll have a national deficit, what role will you play in cushioning the deficit in form of donor aid in form of soft loans want to get this nomination? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe, Daktari, I can give you an opportunity to answer those questions, and then we come to another round.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with the question raised by Honorable Koich, and that question about the skewness of the allocation of resources. He gave the example of his district only having received 10 million for recurrent and development expenditures for 4 years in a row. And I believe, I think the genesis of the devolution is precisely to address this issue of the unequal allocation of resources amongst within the various counties. And perhaps I can combine that with one of the other questions about the CRA. Actually, it's not the CRA formula, but the formula approved by the 10th Parliament. And in that formula, you see that, as Honorable Sakaja has mentioned, the shares in terms of the allocation of resources puts 45% is based on population. 20%, I believe 20% is based on poverty. 25% is based on an equal share, where every county gets exactly the same amount of resources. There's an 8% which is based on the size of the county, and finally there is a 2% which is based on fiscal responsibility. And if I may also jump ahead to answer Sakaja's point, that issue, the 2% on fiscal responsibility, at the moment, because there is no fiscal data from the county governments, what the CRA had proposed to Parliament, and Parliament agreed, was that 2% would be distributed equally amongst the 47 counties. I believe that as we get more information, that could be one area where we can try to incentivize counties to produce more, so that and to generate more of their revenues, more, so that they can use those revenues for investment, for productivity, and so on and so forth. So I believe that maybe in the future, once this formula is supposed to be reviewed after the first 3 years, maybe at that stage we will need to look at what variables need to be amended or changed, so that we can bring about that element of trying to incentivize counties to produce more, rather than just focusing on the sharing of the cake. But having said that, what this formula has done is that it has now distributed the resources in a way that is much more fair. If you look at what was approved by the National Assembly, the 210 billion that is going to the counties, and you look at where that 210 billion is going, you'll find that it is actually most of it is actually going to the marginalized areas, in the sense that if you look at the per capita transfer of resources, you'll find that it is counties like Lamu, Isiolo, Samburu, Turkana. Those are actually the counties that, at least in terms of per capita transfers, that are getting the most amount of resources. You'll also find that other counties like Nairobi, which most people will say have been favored in the past, the per capita allocation of resources to Nairobi is perhaps even a third of the allocations to some of those counties that were considered to be marginalized. So I do believe that the new dispensation in the Constitution will actually address this issue of marginalization and the issue of the inequitable distribution of resources. There was a question asked by Honorable Ngahu on the issue of allocating resources, not enough resources to industrialization and commerce. Let me first say that the revenue base has not been growing as much as all of us would have liked. But the expenditures have been growing much more rapidly than perhaps we would have wanted. And so that means that we have fewer resources but more needs, which means that we really have to prioritize our expenditures. And I believe that the budget that was proposed to the National Assembly does in fact address the issues that the Honourable Member of Parliament has raised. And I would say that what that budget has done is, first, it has maintained macroeconomic stability, because that perhaps is one of the most important things that we need to maintain. And by macroeconomic stability, I mean we must maintain low rates of inflation, we must maintain low interest rates, sustainable interest rates, and we must also ensure that the exchange rate is fairly stable. But having said that, I think the budget covers that issue quite well. The budget goes on to provide for resources to the infrastructure sector. You see that it has provided quite substantial resources to the railway, sufficient resources to the road infrastructure, and actually sufficient resources also to deal with the issue that was raised about getting sufficient energy, and also trying to move towards cheap energy so that we can become much more productive and much more competitive regionally, and perhaps also globally. So I do believe that the composition of the expenditures in the budget that was proposed to Parliament will in fact address the issues that the Honourable, be not directly in the sense that more resources could have been given to the Industrialization Ministry and Commerce, because all ministries, if you ask any ministry, and I'm sure when you are deliberating on a ministry that came and say they have had enough resources, no one says they have enough resources. And county governments will never say they also have enough resources. So I think given the resource envelope, I think we have been able to allocate those resources in a way that will generate a fairly rapid growth and achieve the growth objectives that we have targeted. I think on the issue of energy, I think I sort of addressed it somewhat. The budget has included quite a substantial amount of allocations for generation of energy. I think this is clearly one area that we need to put a lot of focus on. I know that there are discussions to see how we can get even more energy from coal. I don't think we have been able to exploit that source of energy as much as we should, and it's a cheap source of energy. And so I think going forward, certainly the emphasis on geothermal, the emphasis on hydro energy, which are cheaper, will have to be done so that we can reduce the cost of energy and make this economy much more competitive, and to be able to drive our manufacturing sector and to become an industrial country.
Maybe on that, Dr. On geothermal energy, I know that is not strictly your docket, but finance is a cross-cutting ministry. Now, we have pumped in a lot of money for geothermal purposes, and in some quarters we feel that if we were to say let's concentrate in Olkaria and Nakuru until we commercialize those sites, and then we go to other sites. What is being said in other quarters is that you have spread yourselves with the resources you have spread yourself too much. You are singing about geothermal, and Kenyans are not seeing any fruits. So, in terms of your ministry, why don't you set guidelines and say this investment of 40 billion, for example, let us restrict it to areas which we have seen at Olkaria and Menengai. Until we commercialize, we get money from that project, then we can reinvest to other regions. Other than investing in so many places which are not, we are not seeing any hope of commercialization.
Chair, that's a good point. That perhaps it would be good to discuss with the Ministry of Energy and the incoming people there. They may have a different perspective on the issue. Although in principle I agree with you, normally when you spread your resources too thin, you end up not achieving what you would like to achieve. And so that is perhaps an area that the Treasury and the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum can discuss.
I think, Mr. Chairman.
Let him finish. Let him finish. Yeah. Let him finish because
my question was not answered.
He has not finished answering.
Another question was asked by.
Please, not member for Dagoretti is still saying you have not answered. So.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think we have an issue. We have been investing a lot heavily, and if you remember, 2-3 years ago, we invested in Kenyan paper, which was 25 billion shillings. We invested, and they are almost putting in an extra almost 600 megawatts. The distribution part of it is still lagging behind. So our generation investment, we can be investing so much money, but as long as we don't sort out distribution of KPLC, I don't think we should put.
I think you have yeah.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I think certainly the KPLC will have to improve on its efficiency. I think we will need to sit down with them and see how they can improve or how they can reduce the cost of not only just themselves but also of transmission. I completely agree with that. Yes.
Proceed with the other questions.
The next question was on the issue of borrowing by county governments, and the Constitution does just provide that county governments can borrow, but there are two conditions. One is that the county assembly must approve the borrowing, and then second, that borrowing must be guaranteed by the national government. The Public Finance Management Act has a whole string of the criteria that the national government will look at before providing such guarantees. And such criteria includes, for example, that the borrowing must be linked to an investment. It must be to finance a project, one. Second, there must be a demonstration or cash flow projection to indicate that the county government will be able to pay back that loan, and three, the debt management at the county level must be such that they will be able to demonstrate that they will not get into problems of debt sustainability. And so once those are in place, I think that would now be the criteria for the national government to be able to provide for these guarantees. Having said that, there's still the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council, which is still to be formed, and that council includes all the, if I may call them, the finance ministers, the county governments, and that forum is also chaired by the deputy president. And one of the items that that council will be looking at is this framework of issuing guarantees. But essentially, those are, if I got Honorable Sakaja's question, those are the criteria that will have to be taken into account before the national government can guarantee a loan to county governments.
I think just the emphasis really should be, given that this is the first year that we're rolling out devolution, so to speak. Do you see it happening in this first financial year before you have the data, as you're saying, from the counties, before you know how they're operating? Or probably it's more likely to happen from year 2 going forward?
I think at the moment it's probably, since the counties are just about to finish their budgets, and it's obviously unlikely now that there can be any new loans to county governments. There can be any guarantees to county governments. So I anticipate that that the first time that they might borrow is either the following financial year or even after the 3 years, because they need to build up that capacity to be able to analyze that debt and to be able to look at the debt service payments that they are going to pay over the medium term, how much revenue they are going to generate over the medium term, and they also need to come up with an idea as to what is sustainable, because one ratio of debt service to revenue may be sustainable in one county, but it is not sustainable in another county. So that capacity needs to be developed. Certainly the national government, which is going to be establishing the debt management office at the National Treasury, will be able to provide that capacity and help build up that capacity so that county governments can be able to do that analysis and be able to finance their deficits and especially their projects by borrowing. The next question was by Honorable Makau Kingola, and it was about the deficit and how to cushion the deficit. The deficit that was suggested by the budget is on the order of 330 billion for the financial year 13-14. About 223 billion of it is financed by the external sources, net external sources, and about 107 billion is domestic borrowing. Now, I think the deficit is. Let me just emphasize on that number of domestic borrowing because I think it's important, and I think to a certain extent the financial markets have not focused on that number. The borrowing for this financial year that is about to end in June is roughly, actually is almost at least 170 billion. In terms of this year's GDP, that translates to about 4.6% of GDP of net borrowing. What is proposed in the budget is a borrowing of 107 billion. In relation to GDP, that's only about 2.6%. So in fact, what has been proposed in the budget is actually a huge reduction in domestic borrowings. So we don't think that the proposed borrowing of 107 billion would put pressure on interest rates. In fact, it may be the opposite in the sense that we're actually reducing the government's recourse to borrowing next year compared to this year. So yes, in terms of addressing the deficit, clearly we need to look at how we generate resources. We need to sit down with KRA to see how additional resources can be generated, either through widening the tax base or even the tax net, or even improving on efficiency of collection. And on our part, I think as the national government, we need to look at expenditures again. And we need to look very closely at expenditures to see whether there's any expenditures that is wasteful that can be avoided so that we address the issue of the deficit and therefore address the issue of borrowing and in a sense also address the issue of interest rates going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another round of questions. I'll start from member for Masop.
This side. Thank you very much, Daktari, for this particular appointment, nomination by the presidency. I have noted your capacity as an economist, and I've seen the authority you have in macroeconomics and microeconomics, as well as your exposure outside and within the country. I've also noted that you have participated actively in the formation of or drafting of various acts to assist in devolution. We have also noted that we have issues with the Division of Revenue Bill at the moment, where we are talking of issues with the Senate, issues with the National Assembly. You as an authority, do you see any fear in this country of being threatened with this particular issue of Division of Revenue Bill, and is it rightly handled, or what is your advice? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know that question, given that the matter is already in the right place. I don't know whether you want to bring it to Daktari here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But you will give it an attempt. Dahoud.
Thank you, Bwana Chairman. Daktari, you have talked about widening the way the tax base and everything. What is your take on the VAT bill, putting VAT on consumables, knowing that it is being pushed by IMF, who you used to work with? So will you be impartial or partial? I don't know. The second thing is regarding the foreign exchange flouting. I don't know if you are aware, there is a question in Parliament from MP for Barish Hill regarding exchange flouting by Goldenberg 2, where $45 million changed hands without going through the formal banking system. Are we going to look at another Goldenberg, or what is your take on that as well? Thank you.
Thank you. Mheshimiwa Engineer Shadrack Manga.
Thank you, Chairman. Daktari, the Vision 2030 is a wonderful program, and actually our neighbors are actually wondering how we will manage that. But I know that we have also some enemies, some people who are stuck to old things, and people who are fearing. What is your position in this one? Are we in course? Are we able to carry it out? Then the last question is, you have worked with IMF. IMF has been, to some people, it looks like a stumbling block. What is our position with IMF?
Thank you very much. Mheshimiwa Folangata.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Daktari, congratulations, first of all, for your nomination. What I wanted to find out is, generally, you are the mother of all the finances in this country. You're the distributor, you're the collector, and what have you. To me, it looks like you're doing a lot of experiments and forgetting areas which have already been proven. I'll talk about tourism, which is one of the pillars of Vision 2030 and has proven its worth after agriculture. Is there a reason why the Treasury does not consider this as an important factor in the economy of Kenya? We are seeing it right now, being denied the resources that we had actually suggested to give it a growth. Considering an employment or the opportunities that this sector creates and the value chain that it adds, is there a reason why the Treasury does not consider it as important as others which get allocation on a trial basis?
Thank you, Mheshimiwa. Let's be very brief and concise. I will give everybody a chance, but please be
short. Thank you, Chair. Andrew Toboso, MP Butere. Dr. Thuge, mine is very brief. Away from Kenya, I'm looking at the remittances of Kenyans in the diaspora. And I note that in the last 10 years, you have had a very consistent flow of remittances from these Kenyans, but much of it is going to consumption. Could you tell this committee what specific products you intend to develop so that these remittances actually go into investment and actual growth of the economy?
Mheshimiwa Buru, I'll just now come this way. Please, Dr. take note. I'll give as many members now so that you talk
Mr.
once.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Now, Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask my colleague whether, the fears we have had with him. We have attended some sessions with parliamentarians, and they have been very tough on Treasury. That Treasury intends to withhold release of money. You can do very good planning, but whatever you plan, money must be released to support it. So what are the mechanisms now you are putting in place to ensure that there is a smooth flow of money, particularly to the devolved units in the counties. This has been. Then lastly, I would also just want to ask you, you know, the counties have powers to borrow, and the Treasury will give guarantees. But have we exhausted our limit of borrowing? Because we don't want to overburden future populations with too much debt. Now, are we allowed them to borrow, and yet there is no limit? There is no elasticity anymore. So that, you know, whatever they request, you know, what we take nationally will.
Thank you, Daktari. Mheshimiwa Samburu West.
Yes, I want to introduce myself first. My name is Lati Lelelit, MP for Samburu West. I have to say, Daktari, I'm very impressed with your resume, and I have to say that very quickly, because you seem to have gone to really good schools, and that one gives hope for our country. But I want to ask one question. I'm in the budget committee, and one of our biggest worries looking at the budget is that our debt burden is growing very fast. And with the debt burden growing very fast, the biggest worry is actually with the domestic part of the debt. Because you know what that does to our economy. You know, there is the crowding out effect, and I want to know from you, Daktari, what do we do with the crowding out effect that Treasury is slowly pushing us into? Thank you.
Yeah. Now,
Honorable Jimmy Angwenye, then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm really impressed with your credentials. I hope the results will be as impressive. My first question is, as we plan and implement policies for this country, do we have got to invent a wheel when in fact it has been invented, or do we emulate those successful cases, like, for example, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, even parts of South Africa? Why do we make an effort to emulate some of the successful cases? Two, we seem to be moving into donor-supported syndrome, dependent syndrome. Do you think it's easy to come out of that syndrome? And finally, like my colleague I just asked, our domestic indebtedness is increasing very fast. Are you thinking of an idea of having a cap, the same way we have done with the foreign indebtedness?
Thank you very much. Mheshimiwa Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Thuge. When budgeting, we really rely on KRA receipts, the revenue collected by KRA. Is it that Treasury pushes KRA to overstate what they expect to collect, or KRA gives us wrong figures? Because of late, every year, we have a deficit in the KRA receipts. Like currently, I think it's at 60 billion.
Okay, thank you. Mine is just, I would like Mr. Daktari to comment on the capital gains tax in respect to the local borrowing. Will it affect our small investors, have in mind the stock exchange, etc.?
Mheshimiwa Mary Emase. Okay, Mheshimiwa Imenti Igembe.
My name is Kubai, Mheshimiwa Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine is twofold. One, the Treasury, Daktari, being the backbone of the country's economy as far as the monetary issues are concerned, what would be your comment about the central bank and our local banks escalating rates, which are just, most of the commercial banks just raise this interest rates arbitrarily, and it becomes quite unburdening to borrowers? You being now the man at the helm, what are you going to do to check on these escalating interest rates? Two, what you do comment, there's a figure which is coming from the Treasury, and this is becoming the talk of the day the whole over the country, that you have allocated some 700 million shillings to build an office somewhere for somebody. How did you come up with that figure?
Thank you. Mary Emase.
Daktari, one of my concerns has been addressed by Honorable Kubai on the bank rates, but I'll move to the other two. First, I want to also join my friends in congratulating you on your profile. It's very impressive, and that leaves no doubt that you have capacity to transform the ministry. So my question would be, where do you see the ministry in the next five years? And two, I want to again take you back to the issue of poverty, looking at it from a broader perspective. More than 46% of Kenyans actually live below poverty line. What would be your priority areas? What would be the other areas that you would be able to flag out and address in order to address the issue of poverty? In your budgets. Thank you.
I hope you have not asked any question, member for Nambale. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm now on the speaker. Bwana Kamau, the president, in addressing the joint session of parliament, said that it was his intention under his manifesto, Jubilee manifesto, to achieve a double-digit growth. That, of course, would be very good news for poverty and so on and all the other things we want. What are going to be the major sources of this growth in your view from where you sit? And just related to that, he also committed himself to the devolution path. Do you see devolution and the fast growth as being symbiotic, or are they in competition?
Please take note. Members, you introduce yourself first so that you can be noting your names against your questions. Member for Kipkelian East.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm Honorable Joseph Limo, MP for Kipkelian East. First, I'll take this opportunity to say congratulations for being nominated, and I go straight to a question. As head of the Treasury, what is your take on levies which are levied by several semi-autonomous parastatals? In this case, an example I'll give you, like Kenya Railways. Kenya Railways, as a parastatal, has been operating in this country as a very autonomous in terms of levying, especially the communities where it is passing through. The case in mind which I have is a situation where you find the communities are actually fined punitively to cross the railway, which crosses their land. And in this case, it actually causes conflict. What are you going to do? Because we have had situations where we are asked as MPs to actually foot a bill of up to 1.5 million to allow a community to cross the railway. So, as Treasury, what are you going to do to harmonize, to ensure that these levies are not punitive?
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member for Bomet Central.
I am Honorable Tonui from Bomet Central. Looking at the source of income, I wanted to make an inquiry. Which job group is the senior economic advisor placed? How much does it earn per month? And also your opinion on harmonization of salaries as per the job groups in public service. Thank you.
Maybe you should have explained yourself properly, because he's still a member of COPET. I think that is why he's. Thank you, honorable members. Maybe let me just say, I think your CV is very impressive. But looking at the domestic debt, which I believe there is no law which is capping the domestic debt in terms of the level in which it can go. And I stand corrected by yourself. It looks like the government has been taking advantage of that window to really engage in excessive debts, to an extent that most of our funds now, we are using almost more than 100 billion to repay those loans in our budget. And then when you look at your budget, and you correctly said you want to address the macro factors, you say the expenditure are growing more than the incomes. But I believe you should also check in the budget, what is your investment for income generation in the future? And members have asked about, for example, tourism, industrialization, and so forth. Because if you only put money in consuming ministries, next year you'll not be able to sustain those consumptions. You are implementing the manifesto of the current government, which is Jubilee. How have you factored in tourism, industrialization, and the other income-generating ministries? How is that taken care of in the budget, so that the Jubilee manifesto is actually achieved? That is my question. I'll put to you another question once you are done with those rounds. So please, I hope you'll remember all the questions.
Chair, the first question was about the division of revenue bill, and as you said, this is an issue in front of the court. So I wouldn't address it. What perhaps I would say is that, of course, we are sort of starting on a new dispensation. The timelines are somewhat distorted. And so that going forward, what we anticipate is that the division of revenue bill and the county allocation of revenue bill would be submitted to Parliament, which is what the Constitution says, will be submitted to Parliament around February 15th. What we then would hope is that within a month there will be discussions within Parliament, and that both the division of revenue bill, which actually should be approved first, and then the county allocation of revenue is then follows, that both bills should be approved by Parliament within 1 month, so that by March 15th, both bills would have been approved. It will be then on the basis of the approved county allocation of revenue bill that then counties can then finalize their budgets, whose budgets will also, just like at the national level, they will have to submit those budgets to the county assemblies by the end of April for the county assemblies to go through now the public participation. Excuse me, just the way at the national level, the National Assembly does public participation after they receive the budget estimates. So we think that next year the process would be actually smoother than this time. On the issue of the VAT bill, first, it is not a bill that is coming from the IMF, and I can tell you that for sure because I was there. This is actually a bill that has emanated from the government. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit. I recall when we worked on the Public Finance Management Act, I led a team of very bright Kenyans. We were about 15, and we were continually being accused of that bill came from somewhere else. And in fact, it's actually those Kenyans who actually drafted it. Having said that, I think there is as I said earlier, there is need to strengthen the revenue side, and clearly the current VAT has not worked, and in fact, it has not worked in the sense that if you look at revenue collection and the VAT in terms of GDP, it has been actually on a downward trend, and so and we want to change that. trajectory precisely for the issues that this committee has raised, which is how do we avoid getting into more debt and getting into an unsustainable debt position. And so the current VAT has in fact resulted in huge accumulation of refunds at the Kenyan Revenue Authority, something on the range of 27 to 29 billion. This is money that belongs to businesses. Those businesses are having to borrow when they actually have money at KRA. This is increasing the cost of doing business. It is reducing our competitiveness. And so I think we need to look at the VAT from that broader perspective of also increasing the competitiveness, not just generating revenue. But of course, there are concerns that have been raised about whether it will impact on prices. And I must say that in the past, as I said earlier, between 2004 and 2008, I was in charge of formulating the budgets. And I do recall that we used to implement these zero ratings and exemptions. And we knew what we were doing. We would get the manufacturers and see whether if we zero rated an item, whether in fact the price would go down. There's not a single time when the price actually declined. And so those zero ratings and exemptions actually went to the pockets of the manufacturers. But having said that, of course, the concerns of higher prices and the impact on the poor is actually real. And so what in my view we need to think about, and perhaps we can think together with the Parliamentary Budget Office to see whether is there a better way to target the poor. Because I'm sure nobody in this room really needs that zero rating for UNGA. And so, but we should be able to get the tax that you pay on UNGA to be able to target that money to the people who really need. And we can look at other countries where, targeting for food subsidies has worked. I know, for example, in the United States, there are food stamps. They don't use a tax system to address those kind of issues. And to see whether we can have this, a modern tax, VAT tax, that generates the revenues that we need to grow, and not just the national government, because that revenue from the VAT is also going to be going to the county governments as well. But then try to address the issues of poverty through very targeted and specific programs. And indeed, even in this budget, you see that there's been some subsidies for food. We've provided transfers to the elderly and to orphans and vulnerable children. And so what we need to do is to try to expand that the social programs to specifically now address the issues of the poor. I think Honorable Manga raised the issue of on the issue of the Golden Bag. Golden Bag too. I'm afraid I don't have the facts, and maybe once I get the facts, we can revisit that issue. On the issue of the Vision 2030, whether it's a good vision, I think it's a good vision. I think we can achieve it, but in my view, there are several things that we need to do. As I said earlier, and I'll be very brief. One, we still need to maintain that macroeconomic stability, and I come back to it because it's actually very critical. Two, we need to do the infrastructure that we've been talking about, cleaning up ensuring that the port is efficient, getting the railway to work so we can reduce freight cost. We need to get energy costs down, and we need also to improve the road network, and of course water. Third, I would say we need to improve the investment climate. And in 2007, we had improved the investment climate in this country so much that actually Kenya got an award as one of the 10 fastest reformers of the 184 countries that the World Bank was covering. So we need to go back and look, why have we moved from a ranking of 73 to, I believe now is 127 out of 185. So we need to go back and see this registering of business and opening up of business. Why so many procedures? Why does it take so long here? And why is it so much easier to do it in Rwanda and other countries? So that we can address that cost of doing business and encourage foreign direct investments and even local investments. The other thing I would add is the issue of governance. The issue of governance really must be addressed. It reduces the efficiency of the economy. It's a wastage of resources, and really, I think going forward, we must see how we can that issue can be addressed. I know that between 2004 and 2007, the economy grew from roughly 3% to 7%. And in my view, at that time, we came up with several anti-corruption programs that we were monitoring on a monthly basis. And in my view, between 2004 and 2007, in my view, I think corruption had actually, at least the mega corruption had declined. And for those of you who remember, if you remember Anglo Leasing, the last Anglo Leasing contract was actually in 2004. And between 2004 and 2007, all we really talked about was Anglo Leasing. There wasn't another major scandal that we talked about. And I believe it to be one of the fastest reformers. The issue of addressing governance, I believe it is those policies that allowed us to move to a growth rate of at least 7%, a rate we have yet to come to. And so we need to retrace our steps and see whether we can replicate what we did then. And then the other final thing that and perhaps it addresses Honorable Bunyasi's point, is that we now do have a devolved government. And the reason for having that devolved government is that the local communities can make better decisions in terms of prioritizing. And so I see the devolved system of government as actually contributing to achieving the Vision 2030. So if you can assure the resources are going to the county government on a timely basis, and I know there's a question about, I think it was Honorable Buru who raised the issue of how we ensure that resources are going to the county on a timely basis. If you can assure that and address those other points that I raised, I believe that we can achieve the growth rates that we have targeted in the Vision 2030. I don't know whether I should address the issue of the IMF looking as a stumbling block. Let me say this. The IMF normally goes to countries when countries have gotten into financial problems. And when we have engaged the IMF, I think because we have not had a really severe macroeconomic instability, we had a program with the IMF from 2000, I think it was from 2004 to 2007. And it is the first time in decades that actually a program agreed with the IMF was completed and all disbursements were made. And I believe the reason why that was the case was that we had maintained our macro framework, we were restructuring, and so the areas we agreed with the IMF were actually the areas that we wanted to do. So we were able to negotiate from a position of strength. And so, and as I said, it is actually during that time when the economy by 2007 was growing at 7.1 at its fastest rate in decades. So I think going forward, if we can sustain this macro framework so that you're always negotiating from a position of strength, because the IMF, we are members of Kenya is a member of the IMF, and so it has privileges and it has rights to access the resources of the IMF. And so we shouldn't shy away from accessing those resources, but we must also make sure that if we can maintain this macro stability, we will not be going to them in a weak position where they will be able now to dictate what they want, rather than you telling them, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to do it by such and such a time. Can we agree on how much you're going to support? So I don't see the IMF in that light. We are members. When we are in trouble, hopefully they'll come and support us. I think a similar question has been raised about tourism and not providing enough resources to tourism. And again, that could be said about any sector. If agriculture will come and say there's not enough resources. The roads will come here and they say they have not been given enough resources. But for sure, if there's going to be growth, we must focus on certainly on tourism, manufacturing. Manufacturing must be an area where we focus so that we can capture the regional markets and increase our exports to those countries. And so again, because of that limited resource, and because we don't want to get into unsustainable debts, the only way we are going to provide more resources to tourism and these other sectors is, again, to try to limit unproductive expenditures and to try to generate as much revenue without again disincentivizing the businesses, so that we can channel those resources to the most productive areas, whether it's tourism, agriculture, or manufacturing. Dr. Tomboso raised the issue of the diaspora, and the point was made that most of the diaspora remittances are going into consumption, and how can we harness those remittances to address the issues of investment. And perhaps I remember one time we had thought of issuing a diaspora bond, and perhaps this is an area that we again need to look at, so that actually the development is financed by the diaspora. And I think that's an area that definitely we would look at. Yeah, it's sort of like an infrastructure bond, but targeted at the diaspora. Dr. Oburu raised an issue about the fears from Parliament that Treasury was holding funds, and I think this is not. I've had this concern actually many times. And what the way I'd like to answer is that the Treasury has no powers to hold on to funds that belong to county governments. And I say that, Chair, because if you look at Article 2 or 3 of the Constitution, it's very clear that at least 15% of revenues, of audited revenues from the previous year, must go to the county. That is, it is not even an option. They must go to the counties. So from that point of view, there's no way that the Treasury can retain or even suggest revenues less than that. Secondly, if you look at Article 187 of the Constitution, it is very clear that when a function has been devolved to a county, the corresponding resources must also follow. So what we have done is to look at the costing of those functions. There's about 14 functions that are in the 4th schedule that are supposed to go to the county governments. So once you have determined how much it costs to provide those functions, the Constitution says you must transfer those resources. So again, the Treasury has no mandate to violate that constitutional provision. The third is to say that if you look at, again, Article 95 of the Constitution, it gives the powers to determine how much goes to county governments to the National Assembly. I know there's that issue now that's happening with the Senate and the National Assembly, but that's what Article 95 says, and Article 96 says that it is the Senate that determines the allocation among the 47 counties. So the issue of the Treasury trying to hold on to funds cannot arise. Either the Senate will say no, or the National Assembly will say no. So it is.
Mr. Chairman, I think my question is on the disbursement. You know, you have the powers to decide on priorities. So it is not the allocation. The allocations are there by law. So my question is not on the allocations. My question is on the disbursement.
And there is this system of yours called IFMIS. In some places, it is meant to create efficiency. But I think it has been accused in some quarters that it is usually used mainly when you don't want to give out money. You say the system is down. The system is down, but actually it is being switched off somewhere so that you don't release the money to the other organs of government.
Thank you, Chair.
I think it is related, yeah.
Yes, I know, but I know what Dr. Honorable Oburu had raised, but I also wanted to address that issue of Treasury being accused of not releasing funds, because that's been an accusation in the press, and I just wanted to address that in fact cannot happen. On the issue of the disbursements, again, what has been the Public Finance Management Act, the law actually addresses that issue, and what is in the law now says that the county government will come up with a cash flow, with a schedule of disbursements. That schedule of disbursement will be discussed within the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council. It will then be approved by the Senate and will then be gazetted, so that each county will know how much it is going to be getting on a quarterly basis. What has also been provided in the PFM Act is that not later than 15th of the end of the quarter, the disbursements must take place. So at the moment, it's disbursement on a quarterly basis, no later than the 15th of the end of the quarter. And since that will be gazetted, county governments will know exactly what to expect. There was a question also that was asked, and actually was two honourable members of parliament raised it. It was the issue of county governments and whether there will be a limit on guarantees. Clearly, what will happen is that the national government itself will be doing its own sustainability analysis, and that will include how much it itself is going to be borrowing and how much it is going to be guaranteeing, so that whatever guarantees are agreed are within the limits that are sustainable. In the event that even counties are not able to pay for those debts, of course they automatically are paid by the national government. So when you do the sustainability of debt, you must look at also the guarantees. Let me also say that we are working on the regulations for the Public Finance Management Act. The Public Finance Management Act has certain fiscal responsibility principles. One is on the fact that budgets at the national level and at the county level must be 30%, at least 30% must be on development expenditure. That is the law. There's also a limit on how much you can spend on wages, and there's also a limit on the debt. So once we complete the regulations, of course, they'll be coming to Parliament. And so we'll be able to agree on what is a reasonable limit for debt so that we don't exceed those limits and get into debt problems. I think the honourable member from Samburu, I think, also raised a similar issue, the crowding out of the private sector. But I think the discussion so far, if we can mobilize the resources, cut back on expenditures, and then have also agree on a reasonable debt limit, we should be able to address the issue of not crowding out the private sector. Honorable Agwenyi, you raised the issue of reinventing the wheel. And I fully agree with you. We've looked at those countries. In fact, when the Vision 2030 was being framed, we looked at all those countries, the Singapores, the Hong Kong, those ones that have really grown fast. We looked at China. And indeed, if you look at the macro framework in the Vision 2030, you'll see that we try to see other countries, especially at that time, China was growing by at least 10%. It has been growing by at least 10% for a long time. And we try to see what are the characteristics of China. And we noticed that their savings are quite high. Their levels of investments were quite high. And indeed, as I recall, they invest almost about at least 40% of their GDP. Now, in our case, we think at the moment we're investing about 21% of GDP. And sometimes economists like to link the level of investments to growth. And if you look at our growth and investments over the last several years, it's almost like a link of three. In other words, you require 3 percentage points of investment to grow 1%. So when we said we want to grow by 10%, it meant that we need to raise our ratio of investment to GDP to about 30%. So we are now about 22%, and so
that is the vetting process going on there. We have Permanent Secretary nominee Engineer Oganga, I beg your pardon, Dr. Kamau Thuge, being vetted there for the National Treasury docket. Of course, the exercise started this morning with PS nominee for devolution, John Conchella, being interviewed as the first one, and then of course we moved on to Engineer Oganga Magiti for the planning docket. And of course the event will continue on for the better part of the day, but for now we want to take a break, catch up with the news, and of course we will take you back to the Continental House later on.